Hello. Greetings, dear friends. Welcome to this Wednesday morning live stream for Empty Cloud Monastery. I'd like to begin by paying homage to our teacher, the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Saṅghāṃ Namasami. So big welcome to those of you joining live and also to everyone who tunes in later on. Warm greetings. So today I'm going to read a sutta. I've just posted on the chat. It's the Sutta Samyutta 22-146. It's the Disillusionment Sutta. It comes from a chapter on burning chaff. Burning chaff is the first sutta in this chapter, the chapter that contains the Disillusionment Sutta. And it's actually a very good chapter to read. The chapter on burning chaff, because all the suttas are really, you could say they are very nicely helpful when read together as a group. So the sutta on burning chaff that begins the chapter, and these are very brief suttas, short suttas. The first sutta speaks of how mendicants, it's advisable for us to view the five khandhas, the five heaps of our experience, the body, feelings, perceptions, mental conditioning, and consciousness, these five aspects of our experience. We should view them as burning chaff. I get the image of the bits of vegetation thrown onto some fire, some coals or charcoal, and smouldering away, letting off lots of smoke and slowly disappearing, burnt up. And so this image for us to consider all that we experience, both physical and mental, as just so much burning chaff. So in this chapter, there are other suttas, and 3 suttas in the chapter speak of impermanence. The Buddha's advice in these suttas is to view the 5 khandhas, view all aspects of our experience as impermanent. Another 3 suttas invite us to view all our experience as suffering, unsatisfactory, imperfect. And another 3 suttas invite us to view the khandhas, body and mind, in all its aspects as not self, impersonal, not personal, not ours. And so together, this is a really full and rich teaching, I feel, to see how to view the khandhas, our experience as just so much burning chaff, is to view our experience as impermanent, as not self, as imperfect, unsatisfactory. And so these are the suttas that are around the sutta I'm going to read you today, that are in a collection that have been put together in this particular chapter. So the sutta now I'd like to read is number 146, toward the end of this chapter, the burning chaff chapter, and it's called Full of Disillusionment. It's a short sutta. I recommend just closing the eyes, relaxing, and I'll read slowly and we can take it in. At Savatthi, mendicants, when one has gone forth out of faith, one is practicing out of faith. This is what is in line with the teachings. One should live full of disillusionment for form, body, material realm. One should live full of disillusionment for feeling, for perception, for mental conditioning, and for consciousness. Living in this way, full of disillusionment for the 5 khandhas, we can completely understand the 5: form, feeling, perception, conditioning, and consciousness. And when we completely understand these 5: form, feeling, perception, conditioning, and consciousness, we can be freed from these things. When we're freed, then we're free from rebirth, from old age, from death, from sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. In such a way, one can be freed of suffering, I say. So this is the sutta, and I find it very interesting, both the sutta encouraging us to view all our experience as burning chaff, and this sutta that's encouraging us to recognize that disillusionment is the way. And of course, this word disillusionment, when we really consider the word itself, it makes absolute sense that it's something we would want to cultivate. We want to be disillusioned. We want the scales to fall from our eyes. We want to see more clearly. We want to remove obscurations and develop wisdom and clear seeing, clear knowing. So to be disillusioned is to be free from illusion, and that's what we really anyone would consider a good thing. Often in worldly life, we can actually find the feeling of disillusionment to be something distressing, disappointing, upsetting. And to be disillusioned is to be disappointed that things haven't turned out in the way that one would have perhaps hoped, or that things are not as lovely, not as good, not as bright as we thought they were. And there can be a kind of a dropping in the heart. It can be depressing. It can be difficult to experience disillusionment. And yet, what is disillusionment? It is the waking up to reality, where previously we were dreaming, we were not seeing clearly, we were assuming things were a certain way. And actually, when we get the disillusionment happening, it's a recognition, well, actually that wasn't correct. They really weren't like that. Things are not that way. Okay, the reality's like this. And so a growing up, maybe a somewhat sobering experience growing up can be. Idealism is very common in young people, and very good to have ideals, to have high standards, to see the world in a positive way, in a hopeful way, in a trusting way, assuming that you could say things like our parents, people rather like our parents, or like our teachers, our leaders, our politicians, our world leaders, that they are fundamentally good and working in our interests, sound, and what they do is moral and upright. There's that kind of idealism that we can have, and there's the idealism of hopefulness, assuming that things can work out in a good way, and so forth. And young people will, where they find disillusionment, where things are not meeting their high standards, you could say our high standards, human standards, then the idealism will prompt people to, out of disillusionment, disappointment, to try to change things for the better. And it's very interesting to me to see how the different life stages unfold. As people get older, they tend to become perhaps a bit more conservative, but also they have a clearer view often of the world around us. And there's less idealism. Perhaps there's more realism to a degree. And disillusionment has happened. We all go through, isn't it, life stages of development when we're young, where we are expected to, in order to grow healthily, to develop emotionally and mentally, psychologically, we're expected to experience disillusionment. The very young child who sees the mother, the father as like gods, permanent, lasting, reliable, there for me, safe, godlike, divine in some way. Very small child will have this illusion shattered at some point, and it's normal to have that happen. One day the parent's not available, or they're not understanding what the child needs, or they're angry or upset with the child, and suddenly the perfect safety is shattered, and the child is perhaps traumatized for a while. But this happens to us all. And then there's a recognition that actually the parent is not a godlike figure. And as we grow and learn as teenagers, a little bit older, we start to recognize that there perhaps is often an assumption that our parents know everything and they can answer all our questions, and they're cleverer than we are for sure. And then there comes a point where one's education is different, generation after generation, and the parents will be seen to not know certain things that now I know. And they can't answer all my questions. Indeed, I can answer more questions than they can. I have more understanding in certain ways. And often in teenagers, we see a kind of arrogance sometimes, don't we? We see a sort of, well, now I know it all. You obviously don't know very much. How disappointing. I thought the older generations were to be relied upon, more knowledgeable, more wise, more good than me, such a young person as I am. But then one can start to be disillusioned and to feel that's not actually the case. We can't depend on the older generations. The older generations are pretty disappointing and has-beens, They don't know anything. They don't understand me. How could they? They're past it. And so it goes. And so disillusionment is certainly a normal part of life. And spiritually, on the spiritual path, we expect to experience disillusionment also. The search for the perfect monastery is going to end in disillusionment. The perfect community, the perfect way of practice, the perfect conditions for practice, and the perfect teaching, even the perfect teacher. We are invited by the Buddha, friends, to wake up to even our spiritual texts, even our spiritual traditions, not to cling to them, not to put full faith in any of these things, but to investigate for ourselves and to find the Dhamma, the truth, for ourselves. And this is a real call for growing up, both emotionally and spiritually. To grow in wisdom is to be constantly disillusioned, because if we're growing in wisdom, then we're going to look back on how we understood things earlier and recognized that we were not seeing things as clearly as we are now. So, by its very nature, growth on the path is going to involve a falling away of illusion after illusion, as ignorance is turned into knowledge and understanding. So, in this way of appreciating the benefits of disillusionment, we can be glad when our illusions are shattered, even if this may involve some disappointment, some even upset, even despair, even trauma, when we assume things to be a certain way and we discover that they're not so. Now you can see in the world around us that there's a great need for people to step away from illusions and to wake up to reality, the reality of how we treat one another, the reality of how we treat our environment, the immature ways in which we relate to the animal world, the world of nature, and to one another, with, callousness, disregard, disrespect, not recognizing that in order to sustain our environment and our communities, we have to work hard to look after one another and to look after our animal family and all the different species, all the different beings, to relate to them respectfully and with care, with metta, with kindness, with compassion. And to the environment also, the world we live in, which is impersonal. Doesn't have views about things. The weather is it's impossible to offend the weather or to disrespect the weather. to the natural world around us is completely indifferent to our views and opinions about it. But we do share this material realm, these elements: earth, water, fire, and air. Space and consciousness are not unique to any particular being or any particular species. And to consider this interrelationship, this connectedness, this web of life and health, and that we have a part in this. And it's important for us, for sure, to take care of what we use, what we eat, how we live, not to create a whole load of garbage, not to make a mess of things, not to destroy things, not to obliterate nature in the interests of what? Mining for diamonds, mining for minerals. For what purpose? Burning oil, burning fossil fuels, a habit we've got into, and one that is very destructive, very harmful for the entire environment in which we live. And so in these ways, we need to wake up. We need to step away from the illusion of endless, resources for our consumption, and to step away from treating others as anything other than ourselves. If I hurt you, then I hurt myself. If I harm any being, I'm harming myself. If I have the attitude of dehumanizing or disconnecting from any other being, then I'm dehumanizing and disconnecting from myself. How much suffering, how much blindness in that. And so to shed these illusions of perpetual benefits for the wealthy and privileged and disregard for the neglected and underprivileged, all of this needs to, in a worldly sense, this is a growing up that so needs to happen, and spiritually, to be very awake to uh, the willingness to let go of ideas, let go of views, let go of a sense of knowing anything at all, you know, to be willing to be very open, to be a holy fool, to be an innocent, and investigate these Dharma teachings again and again, and always with a fresh eye, a fresh heart, as if we've never heard them before, as if we really know nothing and we're open to learning whatever we can and testing it with our own understanding and experience, testing the teachings, not taking them as gospel. Because even in the Gospels, even in the religious texts, there's, of course, always going to be um, changes over long periods of time that are corruptions. And we don't want to, therefore, swallow every word, every line, every sentence of any religious text either. We want to view uh, discerningly and allow ourselves to take what's good. And if something seems unwholesome, confusing, doesn't make sense, even not so good, then it's important that we have the wisdom to just put it aside respectfully and gently. Keep uh, working for truth, keep letting go of illusion, welcome disillusionment. One can be disillusioned in the ideal, the sense of the ideals of religious life, of teachings, of communities, spiritual communities. And it's very fortunate if we have the opportunity to experience disillusionment in these realms, because when that happens, it really means that we're waking up to some element or some aspect of the community, the teaching, the way, the tradition that is to be explored and investigated more deeply. And this is how we can step forward on the path. Let the Eightfold Path be our guide. Let Sila be our guide. Wholesomeness, harmlessness, right intention can be our guide. You know, anything that's cruel, anything that's harmful, is to be let go of. And renunciation, letting go, renunciation is so important for us to step away from all the clutter, you know, of tradition, all the clutter of the human habit, the human way of creating stories, creating cultures, creating attitudes, creating ways of viewing the world, which we tend to accept as path, what may not always be path. So we're actually celebrating at this time, aren't we, friends? The full moon of May. We're celebrating Wesak, Visakha Puja, the Buddha's birth, death, parinibbana, and also enlightenment. All three great events are celebrated, aren't they, at this time of year, for this full moon of May. The moon is just coming to its fullness now, and so it feels quite natural to consider, especially at this time, the life of the Buddha. Our great teacher, as we know, became enlightened, became the Buddha, in the month of May under the Bodhi tree, we're told, and the moon was full at his time of awakening. And I've always found it very interesting, one aspect of the story of the Buddha's awakening, how he spent time after his enlightenment sitting around the area where he had been practicing, on the banks of the Naranjara River near Bodh Gaya, and get the impression that this was very natural environment at that time. There was a lot of water in the river, and it was a very beautiful area, very peaceful, very quiet, very conducive for practice. And the Buddha sat for many weeks, didn't he? We're told, contemplating dependent origination, the interconnectedness of all things, contemplating the teachings, and perhaps considering, what next. Because he, we're told in the suttas, the accounts of this time, that he was inclining towards peaceful abiding. And having spent countless, innumerable lifetimes developing the good qualities required in order for him to become a world teacher and somebody who realized the truth, realized the end of suffering through his own efforts without the help of any teacher, to be a Sama Sambuddha, fully realized, self-realized being. Countless lifetimes of practice, of striving, of great suffering, many, many vicissitudes, learning, growing, developing for so long, in order to then be able to be a Buddha who could teach others, help others to waken up too. After all of that striving and having realized the truth and become the Buddha of this age, actually, after all of that, he considered actually that it would be too difficult to try to convey this profound Dharma to others. And his heart was inclining towards solitude and quiet life until the end of the body. And it's very interesting that this was happening, we're told, and the gods, Sahampati, one of the Brahma gods of course being aware of so much of what's going on. The human mind is very small, but the mind of a god is very, very vast. And this god Sahampati, the gods having rejoiced at the Buddha's enlightenment, now Sahampati recognized this process that was going on in the Buddha, this inclination towards peaceful abiding. And he came, he appeared before the Buddha, and he paid respects to the Buddha, the enlightened one, and he begged him to please teach the Dhamma to others in order to enable so many others to experience freedom from suffering also. And he said, there are beings, Sahampati said to the Buddha, there are beings who have little dust in their eyes, and they will understand your teaching. And having begged him and received the Buddha's willingness to agree with his request, then Sahampati disappeared again. And so the Buddha began his teaching career of 45 years, tirelessly walking huge distances in what's now northern India. Many, many different countries he visited, many different cultures, many languages he must have picked up, and enormous distances, and always on foot. And he tirelessly taught multitudes of people the Dhamma. And we know this story. We know this life of the Buddha. And we have all these teachings. We have all these volumes of teachings on every aspect of the Dhamma and every aspect of the spiritual path, how to follow the path for Nibbana. Thanks to Sahampati, we could say, thanks to the gods, encouraging the Buddha to give this incredible compassionate service for so many years until he died at the age of 80. So this story for me has great interest because it speaks to me also of disillusionment. How the Buddha, until he became the Buddha, he had a burning aspiration and strong determination to practice for the benefit of all beings, so that as a Buddha he would be able to share Dhamma, would be able to teach the way out of suffering. Once he could discover it for himself, then his wish was to make it available for all. And then, having become the Buddha, this shift, this very different perspective, all of that motivation fell away, and the sense that this way, this truth, this path is not possible to convey to others. They couldn't possibly understand what I have to say. And we're lucky that, the Buddha's disillusionment didn't lead to a turning away from the world and just a quiet abiding in some lonely spot and turning away from humanity and leaving us to our own devices. It's a very beautiful story also when we consider what happened next and how the Buddha lived the rest of his life. And it speaks to me of how disillusionment can be a source of disappointment and sometimes even bitterness, cynicism, a turning away from situations, and how it doesn't have to be that way. Disillusionment is something we can notice and we can carefully choose our response. We don't want to allow disillusionment to turn us away from the good, to stop us trying, to make us remove ourselves from the company of others, to, in a way, dismiss or to give up on others if they're involved in this process of disillusionment that we've experienced or we're experiencing. On the contrary, let's consider being grateful for disillusionment. Let's consider disillusionment as a gift, as a great boon and a blessing and a benefit for us. Because it's when the scales fall from our eyes, it's when we're growing up, it's a part of the maturing into wisdom. And so can we combine when we feel disillusioned, we feel we've been let down in some way by those around us, by the teachings, by our understanding of the spiritual path. Whenever we feel let down by anything and disappointed, can we bring up gratitude in the heart and see, how can I use this disillusionment for path? How can I turn this disillusionment into the wisdom that it is and bring it back into the mix? whatever situation we're in, when we're disillusioned, we don't want to turn away, but rather to compassionately open to the truer understanding of the situation. Say, for instance, I have a teacher who has seemed to me to be so great, so wonderful, so all-knowing, so wise, and so good. And then he or she says or does something that strikes me as not very kind, not very compassionate. Maybe the person expresses some sort of view that I I feel is not correct, not beneficial, that is deluded in some way. The disillusionment can arise again and again, if we're lucky. Such disillusionment can arise around those we look up to, those we revere, those we honor. It would be very easy to just turn away and dismiss them and feel, I've lost my teacher, I've lost my path, I can't go on. How foolish that would be, though, if we combine our disillusionment with the real opening to the wisdom that it is and to compassion for ourselves and our disappointment and our upset, perhaps, and also for the one who has disillusioned us. In this case, for the teacher, to see, well, okay, this person is not the perfect, liberated, nearly liberated, or fully liberated person I thought they were. May I help them to continue on the path and to be able to move forward themselves, and may I also move forward on the path and not let this be a source of falling away or getting caught up in negativity for any reason. So disillusionment is a danger if we're not awake to its benefit and grateful for the opportunity to be disillusioned, because it's a growing up process, because it's an opportunity to wake up a bit more. It's an opportunity to see a bit more clearly. We want to be disillusioned again and again. I remember a talk once where the speaker said at one point, and it really stayed with me, that the holy life, the life of the monastics, is just one disillusionment after another. And the way this was said was with a big smile, a joyful heart. Yes, the holy life is one disillusionment after another. How wonderful. And let's not make the mistake of blaming the situation or people or person that seems to be the cause of our disillusionment. That would be getting caught up in samsara again and again, getting caught up in defilements, rather to be grateful to the situation, the person, or the people who've enabled this opportunity to feel disillusionment, has enabled the situation, or people they have enabled a waking up, an opening to something more real, more genuine. And oftentimes I feel that when we're disillusioned, we're really invited then to be moving into that place of encouraging others, of a more calm, a more contented, a more perhaps mature way of being. And then we can see how the other idealism, the enthusiasm, the, in a way, youthful adulation that can happen for us when we're younger, spiritually or chronologically, how these traits are so vulnerable The disillusionment is bound to come when we're in those states of, kind of idealistic, enthusiastic, leaning towards situations or others for our inspiration. The disillusionment is bound to come, and then one can see how vulnerable that state is and how possible it is perhaps to encourage and support a gentle fall, a gentle disappointment as the inevitable disillusionment hits. So there are many aspects, I feel, to this experience of disillusionment and to the qualities that it enables, the opportunities that it gives for us to, in a way, become more self-sufficient, more independent on the path, in the teachings, to be courageous enough to not follow blindly just because it's easy to follow others or to follow tradition or to follow scriptures, but rather to have the courage to be disillusioned and to seek ever more to investigate the truth here, and not to ever feel that we've arrived at the truth, that we know the Dharma. Never to rest, keep investigating Dharma, because Dharma is constantly unfolding for us, and ignorance is all around us. And so the opportunities to see through ignorance, to learn and to get wiser more and to attain more understanding, these opportunities are always there for us. So I hope these words are helpful, and I'd like to stop here and to open up for some conversation, as it were. I'll look at the chat and see what we have to investigate together. Anyway. So thanks again, everyone, for being here for the live stream. And I'll just see if there are any questions or comments that we can share and explore together. Christopher Han, thank you, Christopher, says, actually, happiness equals no rebirth. As long as there is rebirth, there is suffering. When there is rebirth, you can expect this kind of suffering. Cold, heat, hunger, thirst, defecation, and urination. Contact with fire, clubs, and knives. And relatives and friends get together and annoy you. When there is no rebirth, you can expect this kind of happiness, which is the opposite of what is listed above. Thank you so much, Christopher. Absolutely, absolutely. You could say quite simply, life is disappointing. We're going to be disillusioned by life if we think it's a happy ride, if we think it's all going to be light and bright and cheerful and good. Yes, we're going to be disillusioned and disappointed. And absolutely, and I thank you for this, to point out that, we can't expect happiness in samsara, in this world, in this experience of, in this case, the human realm this time around, in these conditions. We simply can't, because, as in this chapter on burning chaff, we're told there is impermanence, and we should be opening and investigating and considering impermanence all the time, because we need to keep reminding ourselves, because our tendency is to make things permanent, to assume that they're permanent, to want them to be permanent, to hold on to and avoid change. And equally, in this chapter, we're told to consider, remember, know that all things are suffering in this realm of samsara. All things are not self. There is nothing personal here. And these three characteristics are really enabling us to be disillusioned with the tendency that we have to create, to reify, to make me, myself, mine, my things, to make permanent the things that we want, that we feel we have, that we feel we are, and to seek pleasure in that which is always going to disappoint us. Any kind of material pleasure whatsoever. It's so fleeting and so very vulnerable to change, to turning into suffering. Even as we're experiencing something pleasant, we can be aware that, of course, it's going to change. Equally, as we experience something unpleasant, we can be aware this too is going to change, so that we don't hold on to any of our experiences. And so, absolutely, life is a disillusionment. If we're lucky, we'll get disillusioned a lot. If we don't get very disillusioned, that's a shame for us, because it means we carry on running in samsara and really reeling from one disaster to another, pretending that we're enjoying ourselves. There can be some enjoyment. It's just that it's so vulnerable to change. It's so unsure. It's so superficial. And to be able to be disillusioned as quickly as possible, at as young an age as possible, is a great thing for us to then turn our attention towards, well, what is the source of happiness? How do we find peace? How can we be contented? Is there a way out of suffering? And this was, of course, the journey of the Buddha, who we're celebrating at this time, Wesak, celebrating his coming into existence as the Bodhisattva for the last time in the form of Siddhartha Gautama, celebrating this life of disillusionment. We're told the story about, aren't we, when he went out. He lived such a protected life in the palaces, we're told. Who knows the actual reality, but this story is very valuable to consider, that he was very protected. He didn't see any suffering until he was quite old, 28 years old, 29 years old. Hard to imagine quite, but the story goes this way, that at 29 he went out of the palace, went out of his protected space, and he saw for the first time somebody old, and he didn't know what it was, what was wrong with this person. And it was explained to him, this is old age, it's coming to us all. He saw somebody sick. What's going on? This person is unwell. This person has a disease. This happens to most of us at some time. And then he saw the funeral procession and the corpse. Someone has died. What? What is that? And it was explained to him that death comes to us all. We're all on death row. We're all heading in that direction. We're all going to have a funeral. Not that we'll be there for it, but every being, of course, has to die. And these sights, these images of the sick, the aged, and the dead, woke the Buddha up, disillusioned him, shocked him to the core, we're told. And this was the beginning of his search for real happiness, real well-being, to find the way out of suffering. And at the age of 29, he left everything behind and became a spiritual wanderer, a seeker, a monk. And this process needs to happen for every one of us. And so the more young we are when it happens, the more energy we have then for practice, for the rest of our lives. The more disillusioned we can be quickly, the better. Let's be grateful for disillusionment. Let's be grateful for its benefits. And let's remember compassion when disillusionment hits. Let's not fall into the trap, the delusion of blaming our situation or others for our disappointment and distress. Let's rather put our hands in Anjali and thank whatever has happened to enable us to wake up a little bit more, to see a little bit more clearly, to be more mature, and to keep compassionately relating to those situations and those people as we continue on our path. Thank you very much, Christopher, for that lovely comment. So helpful. Thanks everyone for your kind greetings. Good morning, all. I have a question here from John. I can see there's a few questions, so I'll have to be a little bit brief. Thank you, John. He says, I wonder what I am to make of this and whether this is a good sort of disillusionment or not. Thank you. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Sorry, I've jumped ahead. First of all, John says, do you have any advice for someone who, since discovering the renunciant path, has developed aversion for social life, relationships at work, etc.? It feels more cumbersome than before. And then, yes, what to make of this? Is it a good sort of disillusionment or not? Yeah, thank you, John. I think it's really very common for us to feel, that I'm getting more interested in spiritual practice. There is a beginning of a sense of peace and well-being, perhaps. There's an inclination, either way, towards seeking quiet, more peaceful, less bombardment of sensory stimulation situations. There's not so much interest in idle chatter, in gossip, in socializing, in having fun, going out drinking and partying and doing whatever else people do. There's just really no purpose or point to that. And what a waste of time begins to become the sense that we have. Life is so short. It's so beautiful that we have this human life, this precious life. How can I use it skillfully? Often, this kind of question doesn't incline us towards parties, being a tourist, entertainment, having fun. I remember when I was a layperson and I started practicing, and I was just getting so immersed in this incredible Dharma and beginning to really incline very much towards some sort of monastic or really focused practice as a lifestyle. And I had a very wonderful partner at that time, and we were very happy together. But he wanted to have fun. He said, I just want to have fun. And I totally understood what he was saying. And I didn't anymore want to have fun. It was like, I felt like that time was over for me. It's like I'd grown to the extent for myself where my feeling was, I can't waste my time like that. I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to go to the pub, being British, don't want to go to the pub and hang out, and chat. And I just can't do that anymore. And so we went our separate ways, very carefully and kindly with one another, because we had different agendas. And so I really can relate to this, and I feel that it's natural, and one can't. There's no need to resist or struggle so much with this, but just let it flow very naturally. And quite naturally, we will incline, as we practice for liberation, we will incline towards wholesome use of our time, not wanting to waste our time. And I'm not criticizing people for having fun at all, because sometimes there's a need for that also. It just depends on the person so much. But ultimately, I feel it's a little bit like when we're infants, when we play with blocks and build towers, and we just play with dolls if we're, that way inclined, or little motor cars, and drive them along the carpet, the floor, and we can spend hours completely immersed and enjoying what we're doing. And there's a kind of learning in that. And then as we get a bit older, it would be ridiculous for us to keep doing that. Now we're playing with, I don't know, sports and board games and getting on devices, I guess, nowadays, and playing games on those. And that's our fun. That makes sense to us to do that. And maybe we're learning. And then at some point we look back and we feel that would be completely of no interest to me whatsoever at this time in my life. I'm more inclining towards study or spirituality or whatever. And so we have these different stages in life, and we have these different ways of playing. And play, I guess, is really to learn. To play is to learn. And once we've learned what we need to learn, we don't need to play in that way anymore. We then move on to something often more peaceful. It's often a movement towards more quietude, towards more stillness, and perhaps towards more solitude. So I wish you well with the process. And those friends who want to change with you will stay with you. And those friends who don't want to move in that direction that you're moving in will simply gently fall away, and there'll be new associations. We always, don't we, resonate with the people around us with whom we have similar interests, aspirations. And as we change, so those people around us will actually quite magically, in a way, change. And so, not to be afraid of that, and to be very kind and very compassionate around that, and not to turn away from people, but rather to wish them well as they kind of, as the association fades, softens and fades quite naturally. So I really hope that's helpful, John, and thank you for your question. Okay. Oh, I have very little time now. I'm sorry. I'll just quickly see how I can meet the remaining questions. Apologies for brevity. Okay, that was jolly. Sorry, John. Sorry about that. So Sud asks, hello Sud, thank you. How do you think one can practice relinquishment, renunciation as a layperson? Is it the same as that for monks? That's a big question, but actually I can simply say it is the same renunciation for us all. Monks and nuns, monastics, have the opportunity to be helped a lot in our renunciation because of the lifestyle we lead, and that we've given up all our possessions and control of money and so forth. This is really helpful for us. But then we also can work to renounce in different ways as monastics, having renounced the world in the big ways, you could say. There's always more ways in which we can practice renunciation, in more subtle and refined ways. But I would say for lay people to consider what you can let go of in the material realm. Consider what you can let go of in the mental realm, in the realm of views, opinions, ideas, attachment to any kind of, you could say, concepts about things. We can always find ways to let go. And maybe most particularly in our meditation practice, just whatever's present for us, have the attitude of relinquishment. Just let it go, let it flow, let it be, leave it alone. And when we practice this in our meditation practice, when it comes to our daily life, everyday life in the world, we'll find that this attitude quite naturally enables us to see, to have an ability to renounce to see what's valuable to renounce, what's worth renouncing, and to have the ability to do so. So I hope that's helpful, Sid. Sorry, it's a short one. And we have Lavanya. Thank you, Lavanya. Even when you've attained all the wonderful worldly things like a good job, spouse, kids, money, and great friends and family, there is still dissatisfaction. Thank you. Yes, if we're lucky, if we're fortunate enough to have the ability to be disillusioned by all of that, that is the case. Yes. Thank you, Lavanya. And Kit says, this is very relatable for me at the moment as I'm feeling disillusioned at my job lately. This feeling is making me examine my situation rather than just exist, which is probably good. Sadhu, Kit. And Kit goes on to say, disillusionment often seems to be the emotional culmination of burying my head in the sand. Even if it's unintentional or originally for self-preservation, it all catches up. Thank you for that, Kit. I feel that, yes, disillusionment can often come as a shock or a big disappointment for us, because we don't want to be disillusioned. We don't want to suffer on that level. And so we'll often avoid seeing what's right in front of us for as long as we can. So we don't want to have to wake up to disillusionment. Quite often, there'll be an inclination, a tendency for many of us to just stay with what we're doing, stay with what we've got. It's good enough, and not to open our hearts to that within it which is not so good and that needs to be seen as such. And so I feel, yeah, it's really a valuable insight that you shared with us, that we can avoid disillusionment, but eventually, if we're fortunate, it will come to us and we will wake up to the imperfection in our situation. And with compassion, we can do exactly what you're doing, Kit, which is to work with it, not to dismiss the whole thing, turn away from it, run away from it, blame the situation that we're in, but rather let's see then with this fresh perspective, this deeper understanding, this little bit more wisdom I've attained through this great disappointment. Let's see how I can work with this kindly, compassionately, with a lot of metta in the heart. Yeah, thank you, Kit. Wish you well with the situation there. So that's it, everyone. Much appreciation for your comments, which make it possible to share on the Dharma. Your presence enables these live streams to happen. So big appreciation for your patient listening and participation also. Let's end with 3 sadhus in homage to our teacher, the Buddha. Sadhu, 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 anumodami.